Alright, if you're ready, Nolen, we can get started.
Ready to go?
I have a bit of a cold still. Still the leftovers from FanFest, so if I sound a bit odd, that's why. Alright, welcome to this Q&A/class thing on moon mining. Moon mining is an activity mostly carried out, in fact, all completely carried out in lowsec and nullsec, and it's not something that we ever do in Eve University. And it's not really something that we know much about, so we have never had a class on it before. And here we have with us Nolen Cadmar, who is, well, let's ask him, who are you? Anyway, Nolen.
Well, I am sort of the reactions and spreadsheet guy for the Surely You're Joking Alliance. They used to be a wormhole alliance, but then they got pretty large to the point where no one actually came out to fight them, so they got bored and they went to nullsec. Didn't like it there either. Now we're living in Conid lowsec. So we are doing the moon mining stuff there.
How did you become the moon mining person in the alliance? Is it just a job that nobody else wanted?
Basically, I ended up getting it because I'm SYJ, Surely You're Joking's spreadsheet guy, and so when they wanted to get into moon mining, they came to me to make a spreadsheet so they knew what to do, and then I just sort of adopted the role of all the reactions and figure out what's profitable, what's not, and it eventually was to the point where I was just telling them, here, we need this, 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 and this, don't get that, and they went out and found things to shoot and took over all the stuff. So it basically, I was good at spreadsheets, and I sort of got thrown in, but half volunteered, half voluntold.
Yeah, I recognise that. Yeah, if you're good at something, you usually get put into that role. That happens.
Yes, I was more or less requisitioned.
So I take it moon mining involves moons. Is it? So what is moon mining then? That's a bit of
basically moon.
I guess that's a bit of a big question.
Yeah, it is, but I will be able to cover it all. Moon mining is basically you have a harvesting array that you anchor in a pause, and that thing harvests from the moon. Each moon has different kinds of materials. You find out what is on each moon by using survey probes. There's 3 different kinds. One is a fast one, so you launch it and it returns in 5 minutes. If you leave system, you get no results. So you have to launch it and stay in system until it returns, and then it'll tell you what is on the moon. Typically you see 1 to 2 things on each moon. Sometimes there's 3. Once you've determined what's on the moon, you get your harvesting array, and you can harvest from it. Everything it harvests is 100 units per hour, regardless of what the material is. So the value of raw harvesting is based on the market price of the material. All the moon goo is run through reactions. There's simple reactions, which takes the raw moon materials and turns it into an intermediate product. And then there's advanced reactions or complex, which take the intermediate part and make it into a final product. Those final products are used in T2 manufacturing for the components for ships. Like the various armor plates, thrusters, and all those require the final products to manufacture.
So I guess in that case it's a little bit like PI, in that you kind of harvest the basic material and then you process it into bigger and bigger materials.
That's correct. You run it through 2 sets of reactions, similar to like the PI, and then you manufacture with it after it's done. Reactions can only be run in 0.3 or below, so you cannot do them in high sec.
Okay, so but that's the reactions. Can you mine the moons anywhere, or are they a specific place as well?
No, they are also, you can only mine 0.3 or below, and you cannot mine in a wormhole, but you can perform reactions in a wormhole. It's just inefficient because you have to get the stuff in and back out again, unless you're bringing it in to use it.
I guess not many people do that.
I would not imagine that you would. It's rather dangerous, risky, and a pain in the ass.
Yeah. So this moon harvesting array that I think that's located in a pos that's anchored on that moon.
Correct. You anchor it inside the pos, doesn't matter where, and then you have to anchor a silo for it to dump all the stuff in. The silos are 20,000 M3. The raw materials have varying volumes. So I believe the quickest one can fill up is in 7.3 repeating days.
Okay, so it's fairly passive then. You point it at the moon, press go, and wait for your silo to fill up.
Yes, once the silo fills up, you go there, you turn it offline, you draw all the materials out of it, and then you turn it back online again. If you don't turn it back online, you'll stop getting materials.
Okay, yeah, I see. So yeah, kind of like PI, where you have to move your materials out and basic into industrials, and then you have to set them up again to press go.
Yep.
How do you? Sorry, I've said hi. I've asked how you identify which moons. It's the survey probes, isn't it? I take it people fly around in covops and probing out moons and recording which ones produce what.
Yes, when we initially moved to Conid, we looked on Dotland, but of course their records are either not correct or not complete, because, if you have a good moon, you don't want to list it on there telling everyone that it's a good moon, and then they'll come shoot it. So we probably scanned a couple thousand moons across the entire region, and I think we scanned part of another region. The three different kinds of probes, there's one that's 5M3, it takes 20 minutes to complete its cycle. Another one that's 10 and takes 5 minutes. The third one is 5M3 and takes 2.5, but it requires really, really high skill that only maybe a maxed out scan alt would have. So a lot of them ran them in blockade runners, so you could fit a lot of probes in one ship. Then it took probably hours and hours and hours. I think it took a couple weeks to get everything done. Then once we got everything done, we had a Google form where the person would put in, their name, what they found, where they found it, hit submit, and it would go onto this big spreadsheet that then we used to figure out, who owns it, is it not owned, and figure out what targets to hit and which ones to skip.
Do different moons give out different amounts of material, or is it just kind of this moon gives this material and you always get X amount per day from it?
For each material on the moon, you get 100 units per hour. You can have two of the same, so we have a couple that I think they're double cadmium. So you have two harvesters, and one does one and one does the other cadmium. Otherwise, if you have a cadmium and something else, you can put two harvesters, but you only get 100 per hour from each.
Okay, so I've just opened the market, and in the market there's a section of manufacture and research, and then the subsection materials, and then the subsection moon materials, and then the subsection raw materials. I've got a list of about 20 or so different raw materials that go from things like cadmium and cesium and hafnium and hydrocarbons and neodymium things like that. So does one moon contain one of those, or can it contain like two of those, like you say?
They can contain multiples. They're organized by rarity, so it goes from R4 to R64. R64 are the really valuable ones that are a lot less common. So lost my train of thought. Hold on. Right. So the rarer ones, they're harder to find and make you a lot more money. Promethium, for example, I believe is the most profitable at the moment.
But then it's also one of the rarest.
Yeah, it's also one of the hardest fought for, I think. Let me see. Oh no, actually it's dysprosium, 3.6 bill a month before fuel. So you'd probably want to run a large tower. About 400 to 500 million worth of fuel, but still 3.2 bill a month just for that one tower. So they can be very profitable if you have the manpower to take and defend them.
So you would find your moon and think, right, okay, this one does Promethium, this one's ridiculously profitable. You might go there and then siege and destroy whoever currently owns the moon. Obviously, there's quite a lot involved there. And then, if all goes well, I take it you would put up your own pos, stick in a moon harvesting array, and then you're now harvesting Promethium.
Yes, that's exactly what we did. We found, this group has this many towers, this group has this many. We figured out which groups we wanted to fight and which we wanted to avoid. So I think PL had a couple here, so we obviously skipped those because we are not nearly their size. So we would get annihilated in no time flat. But there was another group here, I think it was Jihad Squad, initially had most of the moons, and so we went and sized them up, figured out, yeah, we'll be okay. We went in, and now we've mostly kicked them entirely out of the region and taken all their moons. So, good for us, bad for them, but, I think about a quarter of them ended up joining us now. So, that's all politics that I'm not actually involved in that. I just tell them, don't shoot this one, it's garbage. There are a couple, like atmospheric gases is only 7 million a month. So you'd never want to harvest that because it doesn't even pay for the fuel. The only time you'd harvest it is if you had to have a pause there anyways, and it just wasn't doing anything.
I see, yeah. So if you had a pause that happened to be next to that moon, you might think, well, I might as well shove in a moon harvesting array and at least make a little bit of money.
Yeah. As for the question, semi-safe amount of profit for a single person. It's probably not very high because even the moons that barely pay off their pause fuel are covered. I think there's a couple of cobalts that we have which make you about 135 mil a month just from harvesting. There's a couple of those that are empty, so even with a small tower you're only going to make maybe 20 mil a month. So as a single person, there's fortunately not much you can do.
Yeah, I guess.
Because any of the towers that are worthwhile, a larger group has already taken.
Yeah, I guess this comes on to the whole question of it's not really possible for somebody to do alone. It's done by corporations and alliances that can defend multiple pauses. Because people will...
Yes, because if any one...
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, as I think you were starting to say, basically any tower that's worthwhile is already taken. All the big groups have gone out and scanned everything. There's, rumors of the larger groups having, every moon in existence scanned and on some spreadsheet, but who knows if that's actually true or not. But yeah, any large group will have already taken any of the good towers. The stuff that doesn't make a lot of money, they will attack it if they need it. We have a couple of towers that we just about break even, but we need it for reactions. So if they need it, they might attack it. Otherwise, a lot of people around here, well, here being low-sec in general, will just shoot your stuff because they can. they don't particularly care what you're doing with it. They're just going to shoot it because if you're in a one-man corp, they're like, well, no one's going to shoot us, so we may as well just kill it. The probing question. When you probe a moon, you warp to the moon, then you have to approach the moon, so you align to it. Once your ship is aligned, then you launch the probe.
So
the probe shoots out the front of your ship and it has to hit the moon.
So it's kind of like bombs, because for bombs you need to be moving forward too.
Correct. It shoots out straight in front of you. So you got to warp to the moon, approach it, then launch, then either cloak or sit there and hope you don't die, whatever.
Yeah, so launch, cloak, and then sit there and basically wait for it to give you back information?
Yep. If you're scanning out a whole system, then, warp to one moon, approach, launch, next one, launch, and that's what we were doing, 60 moons at a time.
Yeah. Okay. And once you've harvested this raw material, dysprosium or chromium or promethium or what have you, do you then decide what to make, or do you kind of is there any profit in selling it as it is?
Yes, there is profit selling it raw. That's what we were doing a while back. Well, right when we started, we were running reactions and we were making good profit. Then the market sort of tanked and did something really weird, where basically all of our reactions were losing us, probably about 10%. So we stopped running reactions for a couple weeks and we're just selling the raw stuff. And now we've gotten back to reactions again because the market moved back. Some odd fluctuation happened. It seemed like either just something relating to FanFest or Burn G, I would assume, because that screws up the market every year. The way we're running it right now is we have a bunch of small towers just harvesting, and then we run the reactions in one central location. It's the FedEx method. It's a lot easier logistically than having, instead of, if you have 5 moons, you can have 5 small towers and 1 medium running reactions, or maybe 2. Or you can have some of the medium towers running reactions at the locations, but it's just a lot more difficult. It's easier to just have one hub where we have people assigned to a certain whatever moon. So, this system might be this guy's, another system is another guy's. So they bring all their stuff to one station, and then the reactions are run from that system.
Okay, yeah.
That way the finished products end up in that one system, and the guy jump rating to high sec only ever has to move between that one system and wherever the high sec is.
Yeah, I'm reminded of PI again, because that's generally not done in PI because the basic materials have such a high volume, so it's almost always worth it to at least process it into the basic one right then and there. I take it that's not a problem in moon materials, the volume.
The raws move fairly quickly. I'm trying to look right now at my spreadsheet about the volume. So the simple reactions, all the volumes are at approximately, anywhere between 1,000 for the smallest, your input per day for the simple reaction, 1,000 M3 all the way up to 4,300. That changes because some of the raw harvested minerals have different volumes. The output M3 is 4,800. So moving it through the first stage increases the volume in every case, just some less than others.
Oh, okay.
Then the final stage, the complex reactions, the input volume is between 4,800 and 9,600 per day, and the output is 2,400 to 11,000. Depending on the reaction, some they're compressed and some get expanded. So this one, ceramic fibers, for example, the input is 4,800 M3. Oh, Google Docs just crashed. Input was 4,800 M3 and output is 7,200 M3. So The complex reactions, some of them increase in volume. In the case of the simple reactions, they all increase in volume, so the raw minerals are traded in much higher volumes than any of the further stages, except for the final. So raw and final are the best ones to put on the market. The intermediate stage is kind of it doesn't sell very quickly when we've done it.
I see. So I've linked the one you mentioned, ceramic fibers, and the final product, ceramic fibers, has a volume of 0.05 meters cubed, which I guess is fairly small. But the two inputs to that, so ceramic fibers is made from ceramic ceramic powder and hexite, which each have a 1 m cubed.
Yes, so the input is 200 m3 per hour, and the output is 300.
Right.
So that's an expansion.
Yeah, because the reactions, the input is 100 units every hour, and the output is 6,000 units every hour of the ceramic fibers. So I can't do math that quickly in my head, but that's an expansion, isn't it?
Yeah, 6,000 times 0.05 is 300. I used a calculator.
Yeah, so it's 200 m cubed in and 300 m cubed out. Okay.
Correct.
That's kind of weird. That's almost directly opposite to PI, because the volumes always go down.
Yeah, the reactions do that. Some production does that also. Manufacturing, some doesn't. It just depends on the item. Most ammo is a compression. Most guns are compression, but I forget. I found some modules at one point in time that were actually an expansion.
I'm intrigued about the kind of production process, because these reactions appear to be objects. I mean, is it not just, PI, you don't kind of use objects to react. You just put these two into the basic industry base and the final one comes out. Is it a kind of similar thing in a silo?
It's, I think I have a visual right here, actually.
Oh, I guess I don't mean a silo, I mean a reactor.
Yeah, so right here, if you pull up the visual, you have the moon harvesting array gets the raw material. The simple the reactions you use kind of like blueprints, except you don't actually click on the blueprint and click manufacture. You warp to your POS where you have your reactor anchored and offline. You put the reaction into the hold of the reactor. Then you turn the reactor on. Then, so for this example, there's it looks like cesium and cadmium running a simple reaction. So you'd have two silos, one silo for cesium, one silo for cadmium, because a silo can only have one type of material. You actually have to set it. When you're looking at the tower, you go to the Manage, and then Processes tab, then Production, and you'll see your different silos and reactors that you have anchored. So you have to click the Change Type, and then you select from a big list of, what I want. So you pick cadmium. So you have your one cadmium and your cesium silo. Then you have to actually drag and make a little link, kind of like PI again, where you tell it where you want it to send its goods. So on the right side of the silo, there'll be a little icon of whatever the material is. You have to drag it to the left side of the reactor. Once you create those links, then you turn everything on. As long as the materials are there and you have an output silo, then you're okay. So for simple reactions for this one, it's cesium and cadmium, so that's two silos for the inputs, and you need a third silo for the output. So I think cesium and cadmium makes cesium cadmide, or cadmium one of those two. Cesium cadmide.
So I take it the simple reactor array is used for the basic materials into the first processed one, and the complex is for the processed into the kind of final advanced one.
That's correct. It can get a bit tricky when running the complex reactions. Let me find an example. Here, fermionic condensates, because that one has 4 inputs. So you need 4 input silos, a reactor, and an output silo, plus all of your defenses. So the only way we found that it was doable was with a Caldari Large, at least the way we wanted to fit it. The Caldari Large had a lot of CPU, which the silos and reactors use a lot of. So that allowed us to put a lot of guns and scrams and stuff on the tower. The other factions we found could barely fit in, didn't leave any space for other anchorables.
So I guess that's yet another cost calculation in that you got to work out how much CPU and power grid you need for the tower, and you need to work out which tower and how much tower space you need to process everything up.
Yes, I actually had another spreadsheet that I made for that. I had the different kinds of towers, and I pulled in the right people and had them look at it like, how do you want to fit this? Because I don't know much about fitting towers. At least I didn't. I do now, but at the time I didn't. So I pulled them in and said, hey, how do you want to fit it here? Screw with this. Then, here's this gun and here's its usage. Type in the quantities, mess with it. If it's red, clearly you can't do that. Then they messed with it and figured out how best to fit it and what towers to use.
So these reactions, which, as you say, are kind of like blueprints but not quite, do you buy them from NPCs?
Yes, the reactions are seeded by NPCs. Unlike blueprints, they're not researchable. So you just buy it and that's it. You can't do anything with it. You just put it in the reactor and it goes and goes. It never depletes, never runs out. So they're seeded on the market. Depending on the reaction, I think they have a varying price. So I think the simples are all one price and the complex are another. I don't completely remember, but let me check.
Yeah, if somebody's using G2 or something, you can give us some prices on some of these reactions. I'm currently in a wormhole and thus have no prices. These are in manufacturing research and reactions, and then simple and complex reactions.
Yeah, it looks like the simple are all 900,000. And the complex are all 4.5 million. So that's not really much of a cost.
Yeah, especially since it's only a one-off cost. Unless, I guess, you lose your tower and you lose your reactions and have to buy some more for your new tower.
Yeah, but the reaction blueprint itself isn't really what you're concerned with. It's more what was in the silos.
Sure.
Because when your pause gets reinforced, everything turns offline, which luckily for silos, you need them offline to pull anything from them. So when your tower gets reinforced, you have to go and pull all of your materials out of the silos. The silos can hold between 3 and 12 days worth of inputs. So 12 days worth of dysprosium, for example, might be worth 1 billion. So you have 1 billion in one silo, 1 billion in this other. And then when you get your intermediate materials, they're now worth more than before. So I think the most I've seen in a silo was maybe 3 bill when it was full. So you have a lot of money to lose there if you don't pull from them when your tower is getting attacked.
And apart from having a fairly big selection of posits all over low-sec and null-sec, you don't need any skills or anything to set up these reactions and harvestings.
Nope, the only skill you need is just enough to anchor a tower, and then the modules, which I think are all anchoring one. So that's all you need for it. At least in-game skill.
Yeah, I guess there's quite a lot of player skill in working out everything the best way to make money.
Yeah, most of the difficulty of moon mining is just the logistics, figuring out what you want to do, how you want to do it, and then actually doing it, and getting the materials out. I think we have, I don't remember how much, but it's more than one jump freighter trip each week.
So my next question is, how do these advanced materials go into Tech 2 things? Because I can't see any of them that are used in Tech 2 blueprints. Maybe I'm just being blind, but they seem to be mostly used in... do they get made into components or something first?
Yes, they get turned into materials. I actually have, I wrote it out for somebody yesterday. But yeah, they're used in the components. So for example, a Raptor. A Raptor uses titanium diborite armor plates, which are composed of titanium carbide and ceramic fibers. There's the example. So titanium carbide needs 4 raw materials and 3 reactions. Then the other ceramic fibers needs those other reactions. So titanium diborite plates are used part of the ship. So the ships themselves, you won't see the moon materials, which you'll see, titanium diborite armor plate, such and so thruster, and there are different kinds of shield emitters, and those are what are made with the moon materials.
Yeah, I see. Okay, I kind of understand now, because I've just found a couple more myself that I'm just going to link. Right, yeah, so this antimatter reactor blueprint, which is a component, and you need some kind of skills in high energy physics. That one seems to take tungsten carbide and fermionic condensate, which are both advanced moon materials, I think.
Yes, I don't think the intermediates are actually used for anything other than making advanced.
Okay, so
I've never seen anything they were used for other than that, but there might be, because there's a lot of blueprints.
Yeah, there are quite a lot of blueprints. There are hundreds of them. So this one takes 9 tungsten carbide and 2 fermionic condensates, and that makes one of these antimatter reactor units. And then I can see that that's used in the blueprint of the Tech 2 blueprint of the Malediction, which is a Amar interceptor, and as well as having quite a lot of standard materials, and obviously a basic Tech 1 version of the ship, which is an executioner. It also has a few of these components, including the antimatter reactor. So this one, I think, has 3 antimatter reactors and a bunch of construction blocks and linear shield emitters and nanoelectrical microprocessor. And all of these, I take it, are built from moon materials?
Correct. They're all made with moon materials.
So basically, moon materials are essentially behind every Tech 2 blueprint, really?
As far as I know, yes. I haven't looked at all of them, but...
Right, yeah. At least a lot of them. Yeah, and then Golgoth linked another one, the 200mm autocannon 2s. Use the thermonuclear trigger unit, which again is made from moon materials. So I take it moon material is moon mining and moon reactions are basically one of the most important things in Eve, really. One of the primary kind of sources of materials.
Correct. Between standard mining and then some of those, if you saw, there were a couple of PI things in there. Autocannon, there was there's robotics in there, and so you got to combine normal mining, PI, and moon mining to make T2.
You see, I've been playing for 4 years, and I only discovered that moon mining is behind everything in Eve a few months ago, because it's just not something that's encountered by kind of new players in high-sec and wormholes and so on, simply because it's only done by these big alliances in low-sec and null-sec.
Yeah, and there's kind of a bit of a shroud of mystery around, at least there was when I started up until 6 months ago when I first actually figured out how to do it. But I knew moon mining existed, but I thought like you were in a ship and you actually like mined. But it's just, I don't know what it was, but I think it's just none of the people you meet early on or most of the people in high-sec know really how it works. So it's just this big mysterious, you can mine from moons and things and stuff and you make T2 things. But I never really knew what it was until I actually started digging into it.
So I don't know if this is a bit of a question that you might not want to answer, but roughly how much profit would be possible per month for a big moon mining operation like your alliance, and also roughly what proportion of that profit is kind of your alliance's profit in general? I mean, does it all come from moon mining, or is moon mining only a part of your money gain?
Well, moon mining covers the majority of the SRP program, and then it also, I think there's additional funding paying for other ships and logistics. They got to cover fuel cost, which I forget what the fraction was. I had the number. I believe fuel cost was maybe 6 or 8% of the income. Then it also pays for isotopes for jump rating, and I think we have a public isotope bay for capital ships. So it covers a lot of SRP. It's the majority of the alliance income. And no, I can't give you the exact number, unfortunately.
I guess that's I did think that was probably a secret of most alliances. They're not going to give out their profit.
Yeah. I can give you approximates of what reactions can net you. So harvesting, I wrote this down last week, so the numbers might have fluctuated a tiny bit, but it's generally correct. The least income for harvesting was atmospheric gases at $7.5 million a month, and the highest was dysprosium at $4.3 billion a month. So there's a very, very wide range there. Simple reactions, the profit, so that's profit, it's value added by running the reaction, was promethium least at $23 million a month, thulium half-night at $840, and those are all before fuel. So that 840 mil profit from thulium half-night, you still have to pay for a medium tower, so about 250. So you might make 600 off just running that reaction. So you could do that anywhere in low-sec, doesn't matter where, you just have to ship in the materials. There are some groups that do that, I've heard of it. I think there's some people in the Alliance that they buy one thing that we harvest, and then they ship in the other one for their own personal or corp profit. Complex reactions, the least profitable was $275 million. The highest was $750. For complex reactions, you need either a medium or large down, so anywhere between $2 and $500 million a month for fuel. Then multiply by that by however many you have, and you can make quite a lot quite quickly.
So, and that's even if you're not harvesting anything yourself, you're just buying the stuff off the market and reacting it and putting it back on the market.
Correct. The same way as a T1 manufacturer can buy minerals and then manufacture and sell them for a profit. The same thing applies to moons. It's just a lot more difficult.
Right, because you said the reactors can only be placed in 0.3 or below, or wormholes.
Yes.
All right, so that's something that might be possible for a small group or a very small group, though obviously there's a fair amount of risk involved with the low-sec pods and the transporting in and out of the low-sec.
Yes, and I know from personal experience when we were taking towers, we took some towers just because they had reactors on them. There was nothing on the moon but had a reactor, so we just killed it. So, they make you a target. But yes, a small corp could definitely do it. If you run a medium pause, put all your stuff in. When it gets reinforced, just pull all your materials out and just accept the loss on the tower.
Okay, well, I'm learning everything here. This is quite interesting. The other question I did have was a while ago. This is probably about a couple of years ago now. I don't know if you were doing moon mining then. You may remember that the Mittani and Goonswarm announced their organisation of technetium exporting corporations. Was that something that affected moon mineral prices a lot for you guys?
Yeah, as you said, we weren't actually in it at the time, but basically OTEC, the Organization of Technetium Exporting Corporations, what they did was they sort of formed a coalition where they set a price minimum for technetium. At the time, they controlled about 90% of all technetium moons because they happen to be located in the northwest of the universe. It was Goonswarm, Evoke, PL, and a couple others. So, yeah, they controlled about 90%, so they had most of it to sell, and they agreed between them, our minimum is 200,000, whatever it was. Their argument was that by setting a fixed price, because mining or exhumers are made primarily of technetium, it's about 70% or 60%, I believe, of technetium. By setting a fixed 200,000 price, they were making sure that the prices of those ships didn't fluctuate very much based on the market. That was their promise. But, of course, by jacking up the price from maybe 100,000 to 200,000, they make a lot of money, and then the market consumes the same amount as it did before. Just the prices of the ships jumped up a little bit, but then they did stay relatively steady for a long period of time. CCP did eventually go in and rebalance the moons, so they effectively removed technetium as the bottleneck. I don't know what it is now, but it's one of the R64s, because technetium is actually an R32. So they moved the bottleneck to an R64, and they redistributed the technetium moons, so they're not only in the one area anymore.
And I take it you're not identifying as much market manipulation recently because it's less susceptible to that. I take it since CCP rebalanced the moon minerals there.
I'm not sure about the market because I wasn't paying close attention to it. I think that was about 2 years ago or so, maybe a year ago. Wasn't paying really close attention to it, but it has reduced the effect of OTEC. I think they still keep the name and they do some other stuff now. Because I believe that organization is still around, just now it's not only technetium. And then, of course, there have been talk from various bloggers of, abolish it, it's not technetium anymore. And then, pros and cons about it. And, of course, then just people griping about, grr, they're part of a group and I'm not part of it and they're hurting my group. So as far as market manipulation, I'm not sure. Something happened about a month or two ago. I think it was speculation for Burn-Jita. All the prices of the raws went up and all the prices of the advanced went down, which generally would sound like all the people hurried to get their advanced stuff in and sell it and hurried to buy raw so they wouldn't have to come back during Burn-Jita or their towers wouldn't sit idle. So there is market manipulation every now and again, but not to that extent anymore.
The other complaint I often hear about moon mining is it's all pacifist. All you do is set up a pause, press go, and wait for the money to pour in. Is that something that you think could there be some gameplay improvements there, or is that a fair complaint about moon mining?
I think that's a fair complaint. Most people that moon mine don't because, they don't want to do extra work. But I started as a miner and I was one of the weird ones who was like, mining is boring, but I like doing it, but I wish it was more active. I'm not really a fan of the boring AFK stuff like PI. In my opinion, PI should be more active, moon mining should be more active, normal asteroid mining should be more active, like some people have proposed ideas. One of them I think was called ring mining, where you have, there's 3 ships and they make, you connect a triangle in between them and anything that goes into that net is sucked up. So I don't remember, there were a couple of proposals for moon mining, but I don't quite remember what they were. One of them was sort of similar to PI, where every day the deposits would move around a little on the moon. So you have to go to each tower and sort of re-aim the laser. I don't know if that's the best solution, but it's a change. But I do agree, it is too passive, especially for how much money you make. It is one of the fastest and easiest ways to make money, and it requires almost no effort once you set it up. All you have to do is defend it. And really, tower isn't that expensive, so it's not like you have a lot of assets, hundreds of billions sitting out there. It's maybe 1 bill.
So another thing that CCP introduced recently was the siphon units that will allow people to siphon things from hostile towers that do reactions and so forth. Have you had a problem with siphon units on your towers at all, or is that something that just doesn't happen?
We have had them. The counter's gone. There used to be a counter in our Alliance's channel. I believe we're up to like 170 or so in the last 2 months. So usually they happen on the R64s because they're the most valuable. A siphon unit, basically you drop it within a certain range of a tower, and it'll siphon at a certain rate. It has a wastage amount, so if you harvest 100 per hour, so you harvest 100 per hour, and the siphon unit takes maybe 20% for the sake of the example. So the siphon unit takes 20. So the tower owner only receives 80, but the siphon unit also wastes some 20%. So out of the 20 that the siphon unit takes, it wastes 4. So the person siphoning gets 16, the tower owner gets 80. So there is some loss, but yes, siphon units are a bit of a pain. If you have any guns in the tower, you have to go to the tower and then tell the gun to shoot it. You can't do it remotely. And there's no way to remotely know if anything is siphoning. So you have to actually go to the tower and look. They are a bit of a nuisance, but they're not much other than a nuisance. They can screw up your reactions every now and again, because when you set up your reactions, I'm getting 100 per hour, and the reaction is consuming 100 per hour. So if you get interrupted, you'll lose a reaction cycle. So it's a bit of a nuisance, but it's not going to destroy someone's operation.
I know CCP intended for them to for them to kind of become something to fight over, triggering fights from the defender. Is that something you've seen, or does that just not happen? You just shoot it with a pos guns and it goes away?
I've never heard of it happening in our alliance. Usually just someone warps to the tower and they're like, oh, there's a siphon, they kill it. We've never had a fight come up relating to a siphon.
Well, I've kind of run out of questions that I had to ask about your moon mining, and I've learned a hell of a lot. So if anybody else in the here has some questions about moon mining, then please go ahead and ask them. And
I actually have one thing. It's something interesting. No, you can only set up one siphon per tower. It was when running the reactions, something that I found out after I started making my spreadsheet and examining all the reactions. I have written down here somewhere. Okay. So when you harvest, you get 100 units per hour. The simple reactions consume 100 units of 2 items and produce 200. The complex only actually consume 100. So your one simple reactor will fuel 2 complex reaction chains. So at one point in time, we were producing one advanced material, and it had 4 inputs. So we had we had 2 advanced reactors, and then only 4 simple, because each simple has enough to fuel 2 complex reactors. Sorry, and I'm interchanging complex and advanced, I think. They mean the same thing.
Yeah, I think
so. One simple reactor will fuel 2 complex.
Yeah, in-game calls it simple reactions that create process materials, and then complex reactions make advanced materials out of those process materials. At least that's what I understand from the market list.
Nothing is stopping the pause guns from annihilating the ship. They just take a little while to target. I think you have about 5 seconds. So if you warp in, launch, and warp out again, you're safe.
I can't see any more questions, so maybe we covered the subject pretty thoroughly, because... So yeah, if you guys do have some questions about moon mining, then please do ask, because I've run out of the ones that I had.
I'm sure you covered this, but I forgot exactly how much is it mining per hour?
100 units, regardless of the material.
And will different materials have different M3 sizes?
Yes, let me find the range. I have it here. The smallest is 0.2 M3 per unit, and the largest is 1. So the volume harvested can be between 480 and 2400 per day.
And how much did you say a silo held? 20,000 was it, or I forget?
20,000, yes. So the fastest one can fill up is 8.33 days.
So if you go out and deal with it once a week, you should be fine.
Yes. Yeah, just, if you do it once a week, you have to have a ship that can carry 20,000 M3 or whatever it is. So I think most of our people do it every 3 days, then you can just use a blockade runner, and you never have more than half a silo to take at one time.
So we do have a couple of questions now. The first one's about alchemy, which I know absolutely nothing about, so I don't even understand that question. Hopefully you do, Nolen.
We don't actually perform any of that. I made a spreadsheet at one time, but it's since gone out of date. But yeah, you would have to make the unrefined and then refine it in a station. And when you refine it, you actually get back some of the stuff you used to make it. Let me find an example while I'm thinking about the next one. So the pause modules. By space, I assume you mean fittings, not the ship. Let's see, the reactors, they're fairly large.
Yeah, so this question was about whether it's possible to set up reaction chains as kind of a afterthought in a pos that's being used for something else, or do you need a full pos set on it?
If you have a large tower, it will probably fit. On a medium, you might struggle. The simples use 125,000 power grid and 1500 CPU. The complex use twice both of those. So it might be a little bit difficult because you also have to fit silo. So for a simple, you need 3 silos and 1 reactor. There's a silo. So in the case of a simple, you need 3,000 CPU. And 275,000 power grid. So 3,000 CPU is quite a bit. I think that's about the entire output of a medium tower. Yeah, Caldari Medium has 3750. So if you used maybe a Caldari large, then you might be able to fit it in the extra space. Unless you have a bunch of production or anything in it.
So I guess if all you were doing was using it as have an SMA and a couple of CHAs or something like that, then you might certainly be able to fit enough in to make it profitable. Whereas if you already have a load of stuff that you're researching and so on, you perhaps wouldn't.
As far as transporting in and out of a wormhole, I don't think it's worth your trouble. Because if you try and pull in let's find an example real quick. So if we assume you're buying intermediate, let's do a raw reaction. So you're buying the raws. So let's say you're making caesarium cadmide. Your input per day is 2880. So you'll need 20,100 and some per week. So basically, 1 T1 industrial per week you need to bring in. And your output would be 34,000, so 1 out. So that would be manageable. And a best case scenario would be like ceramic powder that has only half as much input, so 10,000 a week. So actually that's not too bad. I just, I wouldn't want to deal with it, but you could certainly do it. Disporite looks like another good one. You should make about 37 million a day with very little volume change from 4,300 to 4,800 each day. For moon mining in wormhole space, it would certainly be interesting to see them do it. The reaction was caesarium cadmide. Let me link it. There's the reaction. For in wormholes, it would certainly be interesting to see them do it. I don't know if they ever will or not, but I don't see why not. Because currently towers in wormholes, that'd give people more stuff to fight over in a wormhole. It'd certainly make wormhole space more exciting. Right now, really, the only thing to fight over is running the sites, or, destroy whoever's tower is already there. So, I think they should. I imagine it would add a little bit of more conflict, more reasons to be in a wormhole. Maybe, make there be no R4s and R6s, so only you don't get the garbage stuff in a wormhole. You have a higher likelihood of getting the good stuff.
I think I just realised that moon mining isn't an ISK faucet. It doesn't inject ISK to the game, does it?
Indirectly, yes. It's the same as normal mining or, running sites. Not running sites, but it's fairly similar. I guess you can compare it to using a Machina to mine. You click a button, you go AFK for a while, it's fairly passive, and you get money.
Right, but that money isn't made out of nowhere. You produce the minerals and then you sell those minerals and products to manufacturers. So in that respect, it's not generating ISK out of nowhere.
Correct, yes. It's facilitating the changing of ISK and the movement.
Right, yeah, I see. So yeah, like mining and PI, all those ways to make money. It's not injecting new ISK to the game. It's just earning objects to sell to other people. Whereas things like ratting and missions and incursions are creating new ISK from the bounties and rewards.
Correct.
Well,
I believe that's all of the important stuff I wrote down.
Yeah, I'd pretty much like to thank you for coming along and telling us everything you know about moon mining, because I've learned a hell of a lot here. I actually understand it now.
Glad to be of help.